antibiotic resistance is rising at an alarming rate. What were once miracle drugs for infectious diseases are becoming less and less effective as our bacterial enemies become stronger against our weapons. In 1928, the first antibiotic, penicillin, was discovered by this man, Sir Alexander Fleming. Since then, antibiotics have revolutionized the treatment of diseases such as tuberculosis, pneumonia, and cholera. Infections which would once prove fatal are now curable within hours by simple tablets.
But I think one of the clear benefits of antibiotics really can be seen through consideration of tuberculosis. I wasn't, but if you were around in the 1940s, 1950s in a country like Britain, most towns had what they called their sanatoria, and these were places where people with TB effectively went to convalesce but die. And there was no real cure for tuberculosis until the second antibiotic was discovered by Wakeman, which was streptomycin. And really over a decade, these sanatoria disappeared, and so there was a clear societal impact that everyone could see that these places where people went to die had disappeared because of the discovery of these fantastic drugs.
Beyond the life-saving capabilities of these drugs, antibiotics have also provided great benefits in agriculture and food safety and are essential in many surgical procedures.
Well, one of the major benefits of the use of antibiotics has been to allow surgeons to approach surgery with much greater confidence. One of the major complications of surgery is infection, and so being able to offer antibiotics prophylactically, so before surgery as well as after surgery, to minimise infection problems, has been of enormous benefit. And one of the potential downsides of antibiotic resistance is that we may have to start limiting the sorts of surgical procedures we can use in hospitals to treat particular illnesses.
Penicillin alone is estimated to have saved more than 200 million lives since its first use as a medicine in 1942. But how much longer will they remain effective? To answer this question, we need to go back to basics. What is antibiotic resistance? And for that matter, what are bacteria? Bacteria are simple single-celled organisms. They live virtually everywhere, including on your skin and even inside you. Despite their reputation, many bacteria are actually good for us, helping with processes such as immunity and digestion. However, many bacteria can cause disease. In the fight against these bad bacteria, we have drugs called antibiotics, aka antibacterials. They can be produced chemically or sourced from nature, such as from fungi. Antibiotics work by targeting bacteria-specific processes and can kill bacteria by stopping them making essential molecules for survival, generating energy, or putting together their cell wall. The problem comes not from antibiotics becoming weaker, but the bacteria becoming stronger. The reason for this relates to Darwin's theory of natural selection. In all cases of natural selection, random mutations can lead to changes in the attributes of bacteria, such as possessing antibiotic resistance. Normally, resistant bacteria pose little threat, as they make up a small fraction of the bacterial population. But when antibiotics are introduced, they kill the less resistant members of the colony, and the resistant survivors have a chance to reproduce and repopulate. Now we have a large colony only made up of resistant bugs. So how exactly can bacteria resist antibiotics? Well, some common strategies include rebuilding their cell wall faster than the antibiotic can break it down, investing in pumps that eject the antibiotics before they can do any damage, changing the antibiotic's target molecule, making it invisible, and targeting the antibiotic, changing it to a harmless form. Worryingly, bacteria can also acquire resistance genes from each other. They can do this by sweeping up the genetic remains of dead neighbours, or by so-called bacterial reproduction, wherein bacteria connect and transfer genetic data. Over time, some bacteria can collect many resistant genes, making them immune to several different antibiotics. This leads to the birth of the so-called superbugs. Now that we know the basics of resistance, it's time to look to the future. Some experts have given us their opinion regarding what the future holds.
I think this is inevitable. This is simply the way selection works, because you kill bacteria, so the ones that are resistant are going to increase in frequency in the population. So there is already selection for resistance in natural settings. So there are some enzymes that confer resistance that exist. And because we use them massively in clinical settings or for agriculture, then inevitably you select for resistance.
So I think in the future things are going to get worse before they get better. Antibiotic resistance is a multifaceted problem. So at a local level we have a problem with diagnostics. If you go to the GP, it's very hard to tell whether it's a bacterial infection that would respond well to antibiotics or a viral infection that won't. But we also have a problem more globally with a lack of regulation of antibiotic use. So in many parts of the world it's possible to buy antibiotics over the counter in pharmacies, and that leads to a lack of regulation.
It seems to become entering the dark ages. I will come back to the Middle Age when we've got a simple bacterial infection. We have no clues at all about curing the patient, and so literally it's lethal. Just recently there was in the US one person admitted in clinics, bacterial infection. The person died after a few days because all the antibiotics that were on the market or used didn't work. And you see, something which before would have been clear over a week, now starting to be impossible.
So in addition to this being a problem causing increased mortality, it also poses a tremendous burden for healthcare. So for example, recently there was an outbreak of a resistant type of infection here at Imperial College Healthcare Trust, and that cost well in excess of £1 million. So in addition to the human cost, there's also a huge economic burden imposed by this, which of course the NHS is ill prepared for.
The problem is, of course, also money. When you want to do and accelerate research, you have to increase capacity, and to increase capacity you need more money. You have to imagine that to put a drug on the market, or to take a drug on the market, it's billions of dollars. And academic research cannot really do that on its own.
Without action, we may be fast approaching a post-antibiotic era where simple infections may lead to death once more. As a society, we must use antibiotics more responsibly, only taking them when absolutely necessary and finishing drug courses as prescribed.